Coming up, the Mirror's publisher apologises to Prince Harry at the start of the phone hacking trial. A 3-parent baby is born in the UK. Why and what more do we know? And why it's Ukraine's party in Liverpool for the whole week of Eurovision. Prince Harry and the phone hacking trial. It starts with an apology from the publishers of The Mirror for unlawful information gathering. Mirror Group newspapers also told the High Court Harry's legal challenge warrants compensation. Also this lunchtime, a baby is born in the UK using 3 people's DNA. We'll tell you why and get reaction. Reaction to a jury for the first time ruling against Donald Trump from the writer he was found to have sexually abused and her lawyer.
I think it means that in our country, no one, not even a former president, not even a star from Celebrity Apprentice, is above the law.
The Archbishop of Canterbury wades into the small boats row in the House of Lords.
The bill could lead to the collapse of the international system that protects refugees. Is that what we want the United Kingdom's contribution to be in our leadership?
And no ordinary world, how Liverpool is celebrating Ukraine's Eurovision party.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. Prince Harry's phone hacking trial has begun with an apology from the company that publishes the Mirror newspaper. The lawyer for the Mirror Group newspaper told the High Court the publisher unreservedly apologises to the Duke for one instance of unlawful information gathering and that it accepts he was entitled to appropriate compensation. The group is contesting a series of claims by the Duke and other high-profile people, arguing some claims have been brought too late. Our correspondent Rebecca Barry was in court and joins me now. What exactly has the court heard so far on this opening day?
Well, from the coronation to the courtroom. Prince Harry wasn't here today, but he is at the heart of this civil trial, an important part of his crusade against the British tabloids. Now, you'd be forgiven for feeling a little confused about all of the different court cases involving Prince Harry working their way through the courts at the moment. There are 3 major cases against 3 different newspaper groups. This trial involves Mirror Group newspapers, the publisher of the Daily Mirror, the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. They're accused of unlawful information gathering on an industrial scale over around 20 years. Things like voicemail interception, also known as phone hacking, obtaining people's private information, aka blagging, and the use of private investigators to carry out unlawful acts. The court was reminded of those images of a 12-year-old Prince Harry at his mother's funeral. Prince Harry's barrister said that for more than 15 years he was subjected to the most intrusive methods to obtain his personal information. Blatantly unlawful tactics, he said, that were quite frankly appalling. Prince Harry said it led to bouts of depression and paranoia. It's alleged that the unlawful activity was both habitual and widespread across all of the newspapers within the newspaper group, and it's claimed that members of the board and the legal department knew about it and that they sought to conceal it, that they lied to members of the public, to the Leveson inquiry and to their own shareholders. It's claimed that former editor Piers Morgan was among those who authorised the systemic use of private investigators to unlawfully obtain people's private information, and that he knew about phone hacking, something that he has repeatedly denied, including under oath at the Leveson inquiry. Now, Prince Harry is one of a handful of test cases picked from more than 100 live claims being brought against Mirror Group newspapers. Mirror Group have admitted that there is some evidence of unlawful information gathering and unreservedly apologises for that, but they insist there's no evidence of any voicemail interception and says that some of the claims have simply been brought too late. Now, Prince Harry has always made it clear that he will not settle, that he wants accountability and he wants his day in court. He will get that next month when he appears here to give evidence in person. A royal appearing in the witness box at the Royal Courts of Justice promises to be explosive.
Rebecca Barry, thank you very much. The woman who successfully sued Donald Trump over sexual abuse allegations in the 1990s has just given her response on US breakfast television. Sangeeta Lal has been following this for us. What was said?
Well, this is the first time that she's publicly reacted since the jury found the former president liable of sexually abusing her in the mid-90s. Now, it's worth remembering that this is a civil case about liability, not about guilt. Donald Trump has not been found guilty or convicted of any crime. But actually, although jurors did believe Carol's claims of sexual abuse, they rejected claims that he raped her. Now, the verdict was announced yesterday in a courtroom in New York. Today, she's spoken on television in America and with her lawyer have explained why this is so significant.
I think it means that in our country, no one, not even a former president, not even a star from Celebrity Apprentice, is above the law. And Donald Trump, like all of us, is not above the law. Judge Kaplan's one of the most respected, fairest judges. He gave them more process than even anyone else ever gets. He gave Donald Trump multiple chances to come to that courtroom and testify. He refused to do so. He has no appeal.
Now, it took the jury less than 3 hours to unanimously decide the allegation of assault, something Donald Trump has always denied. He actually denies ever meeting her, but then during court proceedings he was shown a black and white photograph which shows him with Carol and his wife, although during court proceedings he didn't know which one was which. He says all the allegations have come completely out of the blue, that they're all made up. He's been told he has to pay £5 million worth in damages, but you are left wondering what damage could this do to Donald Trump, who has launched his presidential campaign just 6 months ago. For any normal candidate, it would be fair to assume that it would be fatal, but he has a lot of loyalists who believe in a liberal conspiracy trying to bring him down, arguing that this allegation could add to their justifications for that.
Sangeeta, thank you very much. Sangeeta Lal. A baby has been born using 3 people's DNA for the first time in the UK. Why? Well, the technique is designed to prevent children being born with some genetic serious or fatal diseases. The child still gets most of its DNA from its 2 parents and 0.1% of it from a third person, another woman. At this stage, we don't know how many babies have been born this way in the UK and what impact it has had on their health. The news only came to light after an investigation by the Guardian newspaper. Here's Sam Holder.
It's a scientific first that has been years in the making. A baby with DNA from 3 people. The pioneering therapy was developed to stop children being born with fatal mitochondrial diseases, passed down through the mother. Until now, there has been no way to prevent or treat them.
This news is a really important step in what has been a long and carefully considered process in order to enable people to have the possibility of having babies that are free from debilitating and life-threatening mitochondrial diseases.
The process is used if a mother's egg has unhealthy mitochondria. Scientists begin by taking a healthy egg from a donor. They remove the nucleus and destroy it, and instead place the nucleus from the mother's egg inside. This is then fertilized with the father's sperm. In total, just 0.1% of the baby's DNA comes from the donor.
All right.
It's arguably one of the most significant developments since Louise Brown became the first IVF baby. She became something of a celebrity. In order to protect the identity of these children, few details have been released. We know that less than 5 babies have been born with the therapy. We do not know if it was successful. But experts say fears about it potentially opening a genetic can of worms are unfounded.
There's been a very long process to look at the ethics of this approach. This was done over many years, resulting in a regulatory approval for this through a parliamentary process.
So there's no chance the baby will look like a mixture of 3 people. The donor DNA only affects the mitochondria, not appearance or personality. Sam Holder, ITV News.
The Archbishop of Canterbury has led a chorus of criticism against the government's small boat legislation in the House of Lords this morning. He said this country had a reputation for welcoming the stranger and urged the government to reconsider. Here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
The Bibby Stockholm barge arrived in Falmouth yesterday. 500 migrants will be housed on it. The government wants to make the UK a less attractive destination for asylum seekers. But the detention and removal of migrants is controversial, and fresh from his global role in anointing and crowning the king on Saturday, no less a figure than the Archbishop of Canterbury took aim at the illegal migration bill today.
Jesus calls us to welcome the stranger. That call has been part of the history and culture in this country for centuries and was part of the drive for the Modern Slavery Act. I urge the government to reconsider much of the bill, which fails to live up to our history, our moral responsibility and our political and international interests.
But this is one of the government's big priorities.
We must stop the boats. This bill, in conjunction with the other steps the government is taking, is a necessary, urgent and indeed compassionate response to the daily challenge posed to the integrity of our immigration system.
But there is considerable concern in the Lords about the wider implications of the bill.
Can the Minister say what would happen if every country adopted the approach outlined in this bill? My Lords, this bill is a low point in the history of this government.
It's inhuman, it's punitive, and the legal concerns represent our obligations under international law and international conventions.
The Prime Minister's spokesman said there was nothing compassionate about allowing people to perish in the Channel, but otherwise wouldn't engage with the Archbishop's criticism. But the intervention of the most senior cleric in the country on the morality of a key government policy is a serious moment for the Prime Minister. Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Westminster.
New official data released today shows homelessness has increased again in England, and the number of households living in temporary accommodation has topped 100,000 for the first time in almost 20 years. The data also shows an increasing number of people who are homeless despite working full-time. Our investigations correspondent Dan Hewitt has been looking into the issue and joins me now. Take us through these figures.
Yeah, Nina, I mean, these figures are shocking by any definition, by any measure. Homelessness, as you say, is up. The number of children in temporary accommodation is up, which is just heartbreaking. And when you consider there's very little hope of them getting out of that situation. But one of the most alarming, I think, trends we're seeing in this data is the number of people who have a full-time job or a part-time job, so people in work who are finding themselves homeless or facing homelessness with nowhere to go. For a long time, people on low incomes, even working full-time, have found the idea of owning their own home a pipe dream. But the idea of renting their own home, that is now increasingly out of reach for people. Let's take a look at these stats. Overall homelessness figure that's up in England, over 290,000 found themselves facing homelessness in 2022. That's up 6%. In terms of those in work who had a full or part-time job, over 72,000 people facing homelessness, so either homeless or threatened with it. And the number of people in full-time work at the end of last year compared to 2 years ago is up 22%. Now, I've been speaking to people in this exact situation. One of those people I've spoken to is Nicole. She works full-time, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, as a personal assistant. She was made homeless 4 weeks ago. She was evicted. And she's now living in hotel to hotel every night. She's tried to rent privately. She can't find anywhere she can afford what she can afford. The competition is too high. She's gone to the council. The council can't even provide her any emergency accommodation. This is what she had to say to me.
You know, since I've been in this predicament, it's really hard to kind of stay on top of what I've got to do at work. And when I'm thinking, God, am I going to find somewhere to sleep tonight? And if I am, how much? Because it's not just, you know, finding somewhere to sleep for the night, how much it's going to cost, and then making sure I've still got enough money to last me through the week for however much I might have to pay through the week.
Why is this happening? Well, we have a chronic shortage of affordable homes. It is driving up competition in the private rental market. It's then driving up prices. Councils have got a chronic shortage of homes. We saw the number of people in temporary accommodation. We're now finding people like Nicole who are working full-time who can't even find anywhere temporary to live. And tonight on the programme, we're talking about people living in caravans as well as living in hotels and hostels as well.
Daniel Hewitt, thank you very much. Thank you. Storms and torrential rain have led to serious disruption in parts of the southwest, southeast and the Midlands. Louisa Britton is in South Somerset, where they have seen serious incidents of flash flooding. Louisa, tell us what you've heard.
Yes, it was last night that huge rainfall meant that the River Cam here in Queen Camel burst its banks and affected lots of the residents and businesses here. But this isn't the only area that's been affected. This morning there are around 20 flood warnings in place across the region, and these are just some of the images that you'll see from across Somerset, just showing the sheer scale of the water flowing through many of the villages. Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service, they declared a major incident this morning, saying in particular asking people not to drive through that floodwater because of how dangerous that can be. But many of the residents and businesses that I've been speaking to here in Queen Camel and in neighbouring West Camel say that they've been devastated by the flooding, and in particular are frightened, or were frightened, by just how swiftly the water came rushing through.
All the water came through inside the house and up from the floorboards, and within minutes we were flooded. It was about a foot deep. So there was no chance to get anything moved or out, and we were just stuck. Luckily we have an upstairs, so we could go upstairs, but we had no power, no water, electrics, anything like that.
Well, Julie was just one of the residents that I've spoke to. Are now entering into a clean-up phase, which will take a significant amount of time. Now that the water has receded, they're seeing the true damage that that flooding has caused, and the clean-up operation will take months.
Louisa Britton, thank you. Hundreds of thousands of people could be taking antidepressants for chronic pain without the proof that they work. In the largest study of its kind, experts looked at some of the most commonly prescribed medicines on the NHS. The report author said the findings are a global public health concern. Sharon Thomas joins me now. Take us through the findings.
Well, yes, this trial involved 30,000 patients in nearly 200 clinical trials, and researchers looked at many of the most widely available medications for depression for people with chronic pain and found that most of them aren't very effective at all. Certainly there was no conclusive evidence. For example, one of them, amitriptyline, is one of the most commonly prescribed ones in England. The NHS website says it can treat nerve pain, some back pain, even help to prevent some migraines. And just to give you an idea of the figures, in 2020 to 21, nearly 15 million prescriptions in England were issued for that alone. But this new study has concluded that of the dozen or so, in fact it was more than a couple of dozen, the medications researchers looked into, only one of them, duloxetine, had any reliable evidence of pain relief at all. And this has led to the lead researcher now saying that this could be some global crisis that we now need to address.
So what's alarming about the results is that hundreds of thousands of people in the UK are taking antidepressants in order to alleviate their pain, and we can't find reliable evidence for the majority of antidepressants. We simply don't know whether they work, whether they harm, or whether they have no influence whatsoever.
Now, Professor Pincus has been telling us that 1 in 3 of us here in the UK suffer from some sort of chronic pain, including Rachel Pereira from South London, who we've been speaking to this lunchtime. She suffers from fibromyalgia, which is chronic suffering of pain throughout the body and plus fatigue, and she's been on one of the medications included in the study.
I think that when it comes to antidepressants, they don't necessarily take all the pain away, and they don't necessarily work with everybody because everyone's got a different chemical makeup. So I think it's important that if it works well with some people, that it should be used, but in other cases, perhaps there should be other options made available to them.
Now, one of the most important things that the authors of this report are keen to stress is that anybody who is slightly concerned by the findings today really shouldn't come off their medication straight away, but should speak to a GP, their own GP if possible, ideally.
Sharon Thomas, thank you very much. Thank you. There were more than 7,000 excess deaths in England linked to diabetes last year. Diabetes UK warn that number is much higher than expected levels and are calling for urgent action. They say the figures could be caused by a backlog in care and are not linked directly to COVID. It was a disappointing night for Ireland, who missed out at the semi-final stage of the Eurovision Festival. Liverpool, though, is buzzing at hosting the week and Saturday's final. There are reminders all around the city and at the event that this is Ukraine's party taking place on Merseyside. Andrew Misra reports.
Unity took centre stage at the first Eurovision semi-final in Liverpool. Local singer Rebecca Ferguson joined Ukrainian star Alyosha, emphasising the pain of separation during conflict through a mournful cover of Duran Duran's Ordinary World. And from the presenter Julia Sanina to her backstage producer, Ukrainians are behind the whole event.
Ukrainian cameramen, Ukrainian girls from sound department, Ukrainian runner. It's very important to have some Ukrainian in the team because we understand each other. We could talk in the same language, and it's much easier for them explain me something.
An understanding shared by fans, some eager to get their moment with last year's winners, Kalush Orchestra, who've used the platform their victory gave them to raise awareness of the war back home.
At the moment, it's different collaborations with different international artists. There are also the steps towards the victory, because the audience grows, more people learn about us, so that we can tell about our culture and situation in Ukraine to a wider audience.
There's plenty of time for sharing and learning before the second semi-final tomorrow night. Andrew Mishra, ITV News.
That's it, bye-bye.
Not everywhere will be cold today. Some places will be warm and toasty. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there. Well, once again, we look at another day of sunshine and showers across the UK. Now, if you take a look at the satellite and radar from early, you can see some places had some beautiful sunshine, but already these showers out towards the west are now spreading their way eastwards. So if you catch a shower throughout today, again, could be some hail and some thunder mixed in there, some torrential downpours in places, especially across more eastern areas. Here we do have a weather warning in force, there could be a few disruptions. But in between those showers, there will be some sunshine and feeling pleasantly warm today. Highs there 19 degrees, 19 is 66 in Fahrenheit. Now eventually we lose those showers as we go through tonight, so becoming dry for many with some clearing skies, although we will see some mist and murk moving into northeastern parts of Scotland. So here, fairly grey start today on Thursday. Elsewhere, plenty of sunshine around at first, but again as we go through the day, more showers developing with some hail and thunder in places.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.